You know what they say about hindsight being 20/20? Well, mine's got perfect vision now, and the view's uglier than a construction site porta potty in August. My name's Nick Barlow, and I'm about to tell you how my wife Serena thought she could play me for a fool while screwing her personal trainer. Spoiler alert, she was wrong. It started 3 months ago on a Tuesday night. I was sitting in my workshop behind our Victorian house in Millbrook, Massachusetts, nursing a beer and pretending to read the sports section while actually watching Serena through the kitchen window. She was pacing around, phone glued to her ear, laughing like someone had just told her the funniest joke in the world. The thing is, I hadn't made her laugh like that in 2 years. Serena worked as an HR manager at some fancy tech startup called Innovate Tech, housed in one of those converted mill buildings downtown. She'd been coming home later and later, always with some excuse about team-building exercises or mandatory wellness seminars. Tonight's story was book club. Book club, I muttered to myself, taking another swig of beer. Right, and I'm the King of England. Through the window, I watched her end the call and immediately start texting, her fingers flying across the screen with the enthusiasm of a teenager. When was the last time she'd texted me with that kind of energy? Hell, when was the last time she'd texted me at all? I finished my beer and headed inside, timing it perfectly as she was shoving her phone into her purse. "How was book club, honey?" I asked, keeping my voice casual as I grabbed another beer from the fridge. She jumped like I'd fired a starter pistol. "Oh, Nick, you scared me. It was educational. We're reading that new self-help book about finding your authentic self." Sounds riveting. What's it called again? Her eyes darted away from mine. Living Your Truth by Sarah Johnson. I nodded slowly. Sarah Johnson. Right. I made a mental note to look that up later, though I was pretty sure the only truth Serena was living involved someone else's hands on her body. "I'm exhausted," she said, already heading toward the stairs. "I'm going to shower and go to bed." "Sure thing. I'll be up in a bit." But I wouldn't be. Instead, I'd be doing what any reasonable husband would do when his wife starts acting shadier than a used car salesman, investigating. After I heard the shower running, I grabbed her laptop from the kitchen counter. Serena wasn't exactly tech-savvy despite working at a tech company, and she had the password protection skills of a goldfish. Her laptop password was still Serena123, the same one she'd been using since college. I opened her browser history and started scrolling. Most of it was the usual stuff: work emails, shopping sites, social media. But then I found something interesting. Multiple searches for "How to Know If You're Ready for Divorce" and "Massachusetts Divorce Laws Community Property." My stomach dropped like a lead weight. I kept scrolling and found more gems. "Signs Your Marriage Is Over," "How to Tell Your Husband You Want a Separation," and the real kicker, "Dating After 35. The shower was still running upstairs, so I kept digging. I opened her email and found what I was looking for in her sent folder. Messages to her best friend Ava, who ran some lifestyle Instagram account and treated drama like it was her personal entertainment network. The most recent email, sent just 3 hours ago, made my blood run cold. Ava: "I think I'm ready to tell Nick about Luke. I can't keep living this lie. Luke says he's ready to go public too. We're going to that new sushi place tomorrow night to talk about our future. I've never felt this alive. Maybe you were right about following my heart. XOXOS. Luke." I knew exactly who that was. Lucas Archer, owner of Elite Fitness Gym downtown, where Serena had been getting in shape for the past 4 months. The guy looked like he'd been carved out of marble by someone with serious mommy issues, all abs and attitude, with a Tesla and a social media presence that screamed, "Look at me, I'm deep because I post inspirational quotes over pictures of my torso." I'd met him exactly once when I'd picked Serena up from the gym after her car broke down. He'd given me one of those handshakes that's trying too hard to prove something, looking me up and down like he was sizing up competition. At the time, I'd figured he was just another gym bro with an ego problem. Turns out he was a gym bro with an ego problem who was sleeping with my wife. The shower shut off upstairs. I quickly closed the laptop and put it back exactly where I'd found it, then grabbed my beer and settled onto the couch like I'd been there the whole time. Serena came downstairs 20 minutes later in her robe, hair wrapped in a towel. She looked relaxed in a way I hadn't seen in months. "You're not coming to bed?" she asked. "Just going to finish this beer and catch the late scores," I said, not looking away from the TV. She shrugged and headed back upstairs. "Don't stay up too late. You've got that big project starting tomorrow, right? The Morrison house renovation. 3 months of work that would keep me busy and out of the house most days. How convenient for her." After I heard our bedroom door close, I sat in the dark living room, staring at the TV without seeing it, my mind racing. Part of me wanted to march upstairs and confront her right then and there, demand answers, scream, throw things, but I didn't. Instead, I started planning. See, here's the thing about being a construction foreman. You learn patience. You learn that the best structures are built carefully, step by step, with attention to detail. You also learn that when something's rotten, you don't just slap some paint over it and hope for the best. You tear it down to the foundation and start over. I pulled out my phone and did some research of my own. Lucas Archer's social media was a goldmine of narcissism. Shirtless gym photos, motivational quotes about living your best life, and pictures of his Tesla with captions about success mindset. The guy even had a YouTube channel where he gave fitness advice while flexing in tank tops. But more importantly, I found his business information. Elite Fitness wasn't just a gym. According to his LinkedIn, he also ran personal wellness coaching and lifestyle transformation programs. I'd bet money those programs involved more than just counting reps. I also found something else interesting. According to the gym's website, Luke had been Employee of the Month at a chain gym in Boston before opening Elite Fitness. But a quick Google search showed that same chain had been investigated for employees selling illegal supplements to clients. The investigation was dropped, but the timing of Luke's departure was suspicious. By 2 a.m, I had a plan. Not a complete plan. That would take time to develop, but the foundation of one. I wasn't going to be the pathetic husband who got blindsided by divorce papers and ended up living in some studio apartment, paying alimony while my wife and her trainer lived in the house I'd spent 5 years renovating. No, I was going to be the architect of their destruction. I finished my beer, turned off the TV, and headed upstairs. Serena was asleep, or pretending to be, curled up on her side of the bed with her back to me. I slipped under the covers and stared at the ceiling, my mind already working through possibilities. Tomorrow, she'd go to dinner with Luke to plan their future. What they didn't know was that I'd be planning mine too. And unlike their relationship, my plan was built to last. The next morning, Serena was up early, humming while she made coffee. She was wearing her favorite dress, the blue one that hugged her curves and made her feel confident. The same dress she'd worn to her company Christmas party, where she'd spent half the night texting someone who definitely wasn't me. "You're in a good mood," I observed, buttering my toast. "It's a beautiful day," she said, not meeting my eyes. "I'm having dinner with Ava tonight. Girls' night." "Sounds fun. Where are you going?" "That new sushi place downtown. Sakura something. Sakura Zen. I knew the place. Expensive, intimate lighting. The kind of restaurant where you go when you want to have serious conversations without being overheard. Perfect for planning a future with someone who wasn't your husband." "Well, have fun," I said, kissing her cheek as I grabbed my work bag. "I'll probably be late tonight anyway. The Morrison job is going to be a nightmare." She relaxed visibly. "Okay. Don't wait up." I wouldn't be waiting up, but not for the reasons she thought. At the job site, I found my foreman Big Al already directing the crew. Albert Kowalski was 62 years old, built like a brick wall, and had been in construction longer than I'd been alive. He also had the best bullshit detector in 3 counties. "You look like someone pissed in your cornflakes," he said as I approached. Something like that. I filled him in on the situation while we reviewed the day's work plan. Al listened without interrupting, occasionally nodding or grunting. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he spit into the dirt and shook his head. Women, he said. My ex-wife pulled the same crap 20 years ago. Difference was I caught her in my own bed with my cousin. At least yours has the decency to use hotels. What did you do? Took pictures, hired a lawyer, and made sure she didn't get a damn thing in the divorce. But that was different times. These days, they got all sorts of laws protecting cheating wives. He was right. Massachusetts was a no-fault divorce state, which meant Serena's affair wouldn't necessarily impact the settlement. But that didn't mean I was powerless. I need a favor, Al. Name it. Can you handle things here for a couple hours tonight? I've got some reconnaissance to do. Al grinned, showing teeth stained by 40 years of coffee and cigarettes. Reconnaissance. I like it. Yeah, I can handle these knuckleheads. Just don't do anything that'll get you arrested. No promises. That afternoon, I left the job site early and drove downtown to Sakura Zen. I parked across the street with a clear view of the entrance and settled in to wait. At exactly 7 o'clock, Luke's Tesla pulled up to the valet stand. He stepped out, wearing a black button-down shirt that probably cost more than I made in a day, his hair perfectly styled, checking his reflection in the car window before walking inside. The guy was a walking advertisement for his own ego. 15 minutes later, Serena arrived in her Honda Civic. She'd done her makeup and hair, and she was carrying a small overnight bag, an overnight bag for dinner with a girlfriend. Right. I watched them through the restaurant window, sitting at a corner table, leaning close together like teenagers. Luke reached across the table and took her hand. She smiled at him the way she used to smile at me, back when we were dating and everything was new and exciting. For a moment, I felt something crack inside my chest, not my heart, that had already hardened into something useful. But whatever small part of me had been hoping I was wrong, that there was some innocent explanation for all of this. I took out my phone and started taking pictures, Luke feeding her sushi with his chopsticks, Serena laughing at something he said. The two of them kissing across the table like they were the only people in the world. After an hour, they left together. Luke's hand was on the small of her back as he guided her to his car. They drove off toward the upscale part of town, where Luke's condo complex was located. I followed at a distance, feeling like a private investigator in a bad movie. They pulled into the parking garage of Riverside Towers, a glass and steel monument to overpriced living. I parked on the street and waited. Serena's car was still at the restaurant. She'd be staying the night. I drove home to our empty house and sat in the kitchen staring at the photos on my phone. Evidence of my wife's betrayal captured in high definition. But evidence wasn't enough. I needed a strategy. I opened my laptop and started researching. Divorce law, property rights, business licenses. By midnight, I had a clearer picture of what I was dealing with. Serena made good money at Innovate Tech, but most of our assets were tied up in the house. The house I'd been renovating for 5 years, putting my own sweat and skill into every room. In a divorce, she'd be entitled to half of everything, including the house I'd poured my heart into, unless she did something stupid first. I also looked deeper into Luke's business. Elite Fitness was struggling financially, behind on rent, equipment loans, and payroll taxes. The guy was living beyond his means, probably hoping to land a sugar mama to bail him out. Well, wasn't that convenient? Around 2 a.m, I heard Serena's car in the driveway. I quickly closed the laptop and pretended to be asleep on the couch, empty beer bottles arranged around me like props in a play. She tiptoed through the house, probably assuming I'd passed out watching TV. I heard her shower running again, washing off the evidence of her evening with Luke. When she finally came to bed, she smelled like expensive soap and guilt. She slipped under the covers without waking me or trying to wake me. I lay there in the dark, listening to her breathe, planning my next move. Phase 1 was complete. confirmation and documentation. Phase 2 would be more complicated. I was going to need help. The next morning, I stopped by Marlene's tavern before heading to the job site. The Rusty Anchor, everyone just called it Marlene's, was the kind of place where construction workers grabbed breakfast beers and office workers came to complain about their bosses. Marlene Torres had been running it for 15 years, and she knew everyone's business before they did. Marlene was behind the bar, polishing glasses with the efficiency of someone who'd done it 10,000 times. She was in her 50s, with gray-streaked hair pulled back in a practical ponytail and the kind of direct gaze that made people confess things they hadn't planned to share. "Nick Barlow," she said, as I slid onto a bar stool. "You look like hell. Coffee or something stronger?" "Coffee, and maybe some advice." She poured a cup of coffee that could strip paint and leaned against the bar. "Advice is free. Good advice costs extra. What's eating you?" I told her about Serena and Luke, leaving out some of the more personal details, but giving her enough to understand the situation. Marlene listened without interrupting, occasionally nodding or making small sounds of disapproval. "That trainer," she said when I finished. "Pretty boy with the fancy car?" "Yeah, I know him. He's been in here a few times, usually with married women who think they're being discreet. Guy's got a type. Bored housewives with money. What else do you know about him?" "Enough to know he's bad news. Word is he's behind on his rent, owes money to some people who don't like waiting for payment. The kind of people who break kneecaps as a hobby." This was getting better by the minute. "Anyone specific?" "Tommy Ricci runs book out of the back of his restaurant. Luke's been placing bets he can't cover, thinking he's smarter than the system. Tommy's been asking around about him. I filed that information away for later use." "What about my situation? Any advice?" Marlene refilled my coffee and leaned closer. "You want my honest opinion?" "Divorce her and move on. Life's too short to waste on people who don't appreciate what they have." "It's not that simple. She'd get half of everything, including the house." "So?" "It's just money and property. That house isn't just property to me. I've spent 5 years making it perfect. Every room, every detail. It's my life's work." Marlene studied my face for a long moment. "You're not looking for advice, are you? You're looking for allies. Maybe." She smiled, and it wasn't entirely pleasant. "What do you need?" "Information. Luke comes in here with other women, right? I need to know who, when, and how often. I also need to know about his business problems." "I can do that. What else?" "I might need character witnesses, people who've seen him operate, who can testify to his business practices." "Consider it done. But Nick?" She reached across the bar and grabbed my wrist. "Whatever you're planning, be smart about it. Don't do anything that'll land you in jail or make you look like the bad guy. I'm always smart, Marlene." Famous last words. From Marlene's, I drove to the Morrison job site. The house was a 1920s colonial that had been neglected for decades. The owners wanted a complete renovation: new kitchen, updated bathrooms, refinished floors, the works. It was the kind of project I usually loved, but today I was distracted. Al took one look at me and shook his head. "You got that look again. The one that means you're cooking up trouble." "Just thinking through some problems." "Uh-huh. Well, while you're thinking, maybe you can help me figure out why this electrical panel looks like it was installed by a drunk monkey. We spent the morning rewiring the kitchen, a job that required focus and precision. The repetitive work was actually calming, giving my mind space to process everything I'd learned. Around noon, my phone buzzed with a text from Serena. "Working late again tonight. Don't wait up." Working late. Right. I showed the text to Al, who snorted. "She's not even trying to be creative with her lies. That's what I'm counting on." That afternoon, I made another stop: Elite Fitness. I walked in wearing my work clothes, looking like exactly what I was, a blue-collar guy who probably couldn't afford the membership fees. The gym was busy with the after-work crowd. Luke was in the middle of the floor, training a woman in her 40s who was hanging on his every word. He had his hands on her waist, correcting her form on squats, standing closer than any professional trainer needed to. I watched from the cardio area, pretending to use a treadmill while actually observing Luke's operation. In the space of an hour, I saw him give his personal attention to 4 different women, all of them married based on the wedding rings they wore. His training style was heavy on physical contact and personal compliments. The guy was running a charm offensive on every lonely wife in town. I also noticed other things. Equipment that needed maintenance, a staff that looked overworked and underpaid, and a general atmosphere of financial stress. The place was busy, but it felt desperate. After my workout, I approached the front desk where a young woman with tired eyes was handling membership inquiries. "I'm thinking about joining," I said. "What kind of rates do you have?" She launched into a sales pitch that sounded rehearsed and unenthusiastic. The membership fees were high, higher than comparable gyms in the area. But they offered payment plans, personal training packages, and lifestyle coaching services. "What's lifestyle coaching?" I asked. "Oh, that's Luke's specialty. He helps people transform their entire lives, not just their bodies. It's very popular with our female members." I bet it was. I left without signing up, but with a much better understanding of Luke's business model. He wasn't just running a gym. He was running a high-end escort service disguised as fitness training. That evening, instead of going home to an empty house, I drove back to Riverside Towers. Luke's Tesla was in its usual spot, and Serena's Honda was parked next to it. I settled in for another night of surveillance. Around 9 o'clock, they emerged from the building and walked to a nearby restaurant. I followed on foot, staying far enough back to avoid detection but close enough to observe. They were seated at an outdoor table, and I found a spot at the bar inside with a clear view of them through the window. Luke was doing most of the talking, gesturing animatedly, while Serena listened with rapt attention. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but their body language told the story. This wasn't just physical attraction. They were making plans. Serious plans. I ordered a beer and took more pictures, building my evidence file. But more importantly, I was learning their patterns, where they went, when they met, how they behaved in public. Knowledge was power, and I was accumulating both. As I watched my wife plan her future with another man, I felt something cold and calculating settle into my chest. The hurt was still there, but it was transforming into something more useful. Revenge. 2 weeks later, I had enough information to write a book about Luke's business practices and Serena's affair. Marlene had been a goldmine of intelligence, providing details about Luke's financial problems and his history with other married women. Apparently, I wasn't the first husband to be cuckolded by the charming personal trainer. But I was going to be the last. The plan I'd been developing had 3 phases. Phase 1 was complete: surveillance and intelligence gathering. Phase 2 was about to begin: disruption and exposure. Phase 3 would be the finale, and I was saving that for when it would have maximum impact. I was at the job site, installing crown molding in the Morrisons' dining room, when my phone rang. It was Detective Eddie Sloan, a guy I'd met at Marlene's a few months back. Eddie was off duty most evenings, nursing beers and complaining about his ex-wife's lawyer. "Nick, you got a minute?" "Sure. What's up?" "I heard through the grapevine that you might be having some personal problems. Thought you might want to know that your wife's boyfriend is on our radar." I set down my nail gun and stepped outside where I could talk privately. "What kind of radar?" "The kind that involves illegal supplements and tax evasion. We've been building a case against him for months. Thought you should know in case you're planning anything stupid." Define stupid. Eddie laughed, but it wasn't entirely friendly. "The kind of stupid that involves assault charges or property damage. Look, I get it. Guy's screwing your wife, you want to punch his lights out, but that'll just make you look like the bad guy when this all goes to court." "I'm not planning to hit anyone, Eddie." "Good. But if you happen to come across any information about Luke's business practices, the kind of information that might help our investigation, well, Tips from concerned citizens are always welcome. After Eddie hung up, I stood in the Morrisons' backyard, looking at their half-finished deck and thinking about timing. The police were already investigating Luke, which meant I needed to accelerate my timeline. If they arrested him before I could execute my plan, it would ruin everything. I called Al over and explained the situation. So the cops are closing in on your wife's boyfriend, and you want to blow up his life before they can arrest him? Al scratched his chin thoughtfully. That's either brilliant or completely insane. Maybe both. What do you need me to do? That evening, I put Phase 2 into motion. Instead of going home, I drove to Innovate Tech's office building. Serena's car was still in the parking lot, along with a handful of others belonging to people who actually were working late. I waited until she came out at 8:30, then followed her to Elite Fitness. She went inside for what I assumed was her training session with Luke. This was perfect. It gave me time to execute the first part of my plan. I drove to Luke's condo complex and parked in the visitors section. Using skills I'd learned from years of construction work, I let myself into the building through a service entrance that had a broken lock. The security in these upscale places was mostly for show. Luke's condo was on the 4th floor, apartment 4C. I knew he wasn't home, but I also knew he had a habit of leaving his balcony door unlocked. I'd observed this during my surveillance. The building was designed with balconies that were close enough together that an athletic person could move between them. Good thing I'd stayed in shape. I climbed the fire escape to the 3rd floor, then used the balcony railings to reach Luke's apartment. The sliding door was indeed unlocked, and I slipped inside. The condo was exactly what I'd expected. Expensive furniture, motivational posters, and a kitchen that looked like it had never been used. But I wasn't there for the decor. I was there for Luke's computer. Like most narcissists, Luke wasn't particularly security conscious. His laptop was sitting open on the kitchen counter, still logged in. I plugged in a USB drive and started copying files, financial records, client information, and most importantly, his personal training videos. The videos were exactly what I'd suspected. Luke recorded his sessions with female clients, ostensibly for form analysis and progress tracking. But the camera angles and his hands-on approach suggested a different purpose entirely. I found videos of at least a dozen different women, including several I recognized from around town. Married women, all of them, being trained by Luke in ways that had nothing to do with fitness. But the real goldmine was his financial records. Luke was in serious debt, behind on rent, equipment loans, and owing significant money to Tommy Ricci. He was also skimming money from the gym's accounts and selling illegal supplements to clients without their knowledge. I copied everything onto multiple USB drives, then planted something special in his computer, a virus that would slowly corrupt his files over the next few weeks. Not enough to be immediately noticeable, but enough to cause serious problems when he needed his records most. Before leaving, I made one more stop. Luke's bedroom closet contained a safe that was about as secure as a cardboard box. Inside, I found cash, more illegal supplements, and a collection of photos that made my stomach turn. Pictures of his female clients in compromising positions, taken without their knowledge. Pictures of married women, including several shots of Serena that had clearly been taken in his condo. I photographed everything, then replaced the items exactly as I'd found them. When I was finished, I slipped back out through the balcony and climbed down to the parking garage. The whole operation had taken less than an hour. By the time I got home, Serena was already there, fresh from her workout and humming in the shower. I sat at the kitchen table, reviewing the files I'd copied, planning the next phase of my operation. The evidence I'd gathered would destroy Luke's business and probably land him in jail. But that wasn't enough. I wanted him to suffer the way I'd suffered, to feel the humiliation and betrayal that had been eating at me for weeks. And I wanted Serena to watch it happen. I opened my laptop and started making phone calls. The first was to Tommy Ricci's restaurant. I didn't identify myself, just left a message that someone had information about Luke Archer's gambling debts and would call back tomorrow. The second call was to the Massachusetts Department of Revenue, reporting suspected tax evasion by Elite Fitness. The third call was to Channel 7 News, where I spoke to an investigative reporter named Jessica Chen, who specialized in consumer fraud stories. I have information about a local business that's been scamming customers and engaging in illegal activities, I told her. What kind of information? The kind that comes with video evidence and financial records. Jessica was very interested in meeting with me. By midnight, I had set in motion a chain of events that would destroy Luke's life piece by piece. But I wasn't done yet. The best part was still to come. I looked at the photos of Serena on my phone, pictures of her laughing with Luke, kissing him, planning their future together. Soon, she'd learn what it felt like to have those dreams shattered, just like she'd shattered mine. The next morning, Serena was unusually quiet over breakfast. She kept checking her phone with a worried expression, and when it rang, she answered immediately. "Luke? What's wrong?" Her voice was sharp with concern. I pretended to read the newspaper while listening to her half of the conversation. "What do you mean the police were there?" "No, I haven't heard anything. Are you sure?" Okay, just calm down. We'll figure this out." She hung up and stared at her phone for a long moment. "Everything all right?" I asked, not looking up from the sports section. "Oh, yeah, just some drama at Ava's work. She was a terrible liar when she was stressed." "Sounds serious." "It's nothing. I have to go. I'm going to be late." She grabbed her purse and headed for the door, then stopped and came back to kiss my cheek. It was the first time she'd done that in weeks. "Nick? I love you." "Love you too," I said automatically, but the words felt like ash in my mouth. After she left, I called Eddie Sloan. "Morning, detective. I heard there might have been some activity at Elite Fitness yesterday." "Word travels fast. Yeah, we executed a search warrant. Found some interesting things. You wouldn't happen to know anything about an anonymous tip we received, would you?" "Can't say that I do, but I'm glad to hear you're keeping our community safe from dangerous criminals." "Uh-huh. Well, just so you know, Luke Archer is going to be tied up with legal problems for the foreseeable future. Might want to keep that in mind for your personal planning." "I'll keep that in mind." "Thanks, Eddie." The police raid was just the beginning. Over the next few days, Luke's world started falling apart in spectacular fashion. The Massachusetts Department of Revenue froze Elite Fitness's bank accounts pending their tax investigation. Several of Luke's female clients, after learning about the hidden cameras and illegal supplements, filed complaints with the Better Business Bureau and threatened lawsuits. But the real death blow came from Tommy Ricci. I was at Marlene's that Friday evening when Tommy himself walked in. He was a small man in his 60s, but he carried himself with the confidence of someone who'd never lost a fight that mattered. He nodded to Marlene and took a seat at the end of the bar. "Marlene tells me you're the one who's been asking about Luke Archer," he said without preamble. "Might be. Guy owes me 30 grand, been ducking my calls for 2 weeks. You wouldn't happen to know where I might find him, would you?" I sipped my beer thoughtfully. Last I heard, he was dealing with some legal problems. Police raid, tax investigation, that sort of thing. Tommy's smile was thin and cold. "Legal problems. That's unfortunate. Makes it harder for a man to pay his debts." "I imagine it does. Course, a man in legal trouble might be desperate enough to do something stupid. Run away, maybe. Change his name. That would be very disappointing." "I'm sure it would be." Tommy finished his drink and stood up. "If you happen to see Mr. Archer, you might mention that I'm a patient man, but my patience has limits." After he left, Marlene shook her head. "You're playing with fire, Nick. Sometimes fire is the only thing that works." That weekend, I put the final pieces of my plan into motion. I'd been saving the best evidence for last, the videos and photos I'd found in Luke's safe. But I wasn't going to turn them over to the police or the media. I had something more personal in mind. I created a slideshow presentation, complete with music and captions, featuring Luke's greatest hits. Photos of him with various married women, screenshots of his financial records showing his debts and illegal activities, and selected clips from his training videos that left no doubt about what kind of services he was really providing. Then I created a dozen copies on USB drives and prepared for the grand finale. Sunday evening, Serena told me she was going to see Luke. "He's going through a rough time," she said. "I just want to be there for him." "Of course you do," I said. "That's what friends are for." She looked at me strangely, probably wondering why I wasn't asking more questions or showing any jealousy. If she'd been thinking clearly, she might have realized that my calm acceptance was more dangerous than anger would have been. But Serena wasn't thinking clearly. She was in love, or what she thought was love, and that made her stupid. After she left, I loaded my truck with the materials I'd prepared and drove to Elite Fitness. The gym was closed on Sundays, but I knew Luke and Serena would be there. Luke had a key, and they'd been using the empty gym for their private meetings. I parked across the street and waited. Sure enough, Luke's Tesla was in the parking lot, along with Serena's Honda. It was time for the final act. I waited until full darkness before making my move. The gym's security system was a joke, just a basic alarm that could be bypassed if you knew what you were doing. And after 20 years in construction, I knew exactly what I was doing. I entered through the back door, moving quietly through the darkened gym toward the sounds coming from Luke's office. What I heard made my stomach turn, but it also confirmed everything I'd suspected about their relationship. I set up my equipment in the main gym area, connecting a laptop to the large screen TV that Luke used for his motivational presentations. Then I called out loudly, "Hello? Is someone in here?" The sounds from the office stopped abruptly. I heard frantic whispering, then footsteps. Luke appeared first, shirtless and trying to look intimidating. "Nick? What the hell are you doing here?" "Looking for my wife," I said calmly. "Her friend Ava said she might be here." Serena emerged from the office, her hair disheveled and her clothes hastily rearranged. Her face was flushed with embarrassment and fear. "Nick, I can explain." "No need," I said, pressing a button on the laptop. "I think this explains everything." The big screen lit up with the first slide of my presentation, a photo of Luke and Serena kissing at Sakura Zen, with the caption, "True love or just another conquest." Serena gasped. Luke stepped forward aggressively. "You son of a bitch, how did you—" "Sit down, Luke." My voice was quiet, but carried enough authority to stop him in his tracks. "Both of you. We're going to watch a little movie together." The next slide showed Luke's financial records, highlighting his debts and illegal activities. Then came the photos from his safe. Dozens of married women in compromising positions, including several shots of Serena that she clearly didn't know had been taken. "Oh my God," Serena whispered, staring at pictures of herself that she'd never posed for. "Luke, what is this?" "I can explain, baby. Those aren't what they look like, but the evidence spoke for itself." Video clips of Luke's training sessions with other women, audio recordings of him bragging about his conquests, financial records showing how he'd been skimming money from the gym to pay his gambling debts. The final slide was a group photo of all the women Luke had been involved with over the past year, including Serena. The caption read, "Congratulations, Serena. You're number 12. Serena stared at the screen in horror, finally understanding that she wasn't Luke's first affair, or his second, or even his 10th. She was just the latest in a long line of married women he'd seduced and exploited. "You bastard," she whispered, turning to Luke. "You told me I was special. You said you'd never felt this way before." Luke's mask finally slipped. "Oh, grow up, Serena. You think you're the first bored housewife to throw herself at me? You were just another easy mark." The cruelty in his voice was like a physical blow. Serena staggered backward, tears streaming down her face. "But you said you loved me. You said we were going to be together." I say a lot of things. It's called customer service. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Here's what's going to happen, I said, ejecting the USB drive from the laptop. Luke, you're going to disappear. Tonight. Pack your things and leave town. Because Tommy Ricci is looking for you and he's not as patient as I am. Luke's face went pale. You told Tommy where to find me? I didn't have to. Word gets around when someone owes money to the wrong people. You can't do this. I'll call the police. And tell them what? That I exposed your illegal business activities? That I revealed how you've been secretly recording your female clients? Please, make that call. I'm sure Detective Sloan would love to hear from you. Luke looked around desperately, but there was no escape from the trap I'd built. His business was destroyed, his debts were due, and the police were building a case against him. Running was his only option. Serena, we can still... Get away from me. Her voice was pure venom. Don't ever speak to me again. Luke grabbed his shirt and headed for the door. This isn't over, Nick. Yeah, it is. After he left, Serena and I stood in the empty gym, surrounded by the evidence of her betrayal. She was crying quietly, her dreams of a new life shattered like glass. How long have you known? She asked finally. Long enough? Are you going to divorce me? I looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time in months. She was still beautiful, but I could see the selfishness in her eyes, the entitlement that had made her think she could have everything she wanted without consequences. That depends, I said. On what? On whether you're willing to earn your way back. She stared at me in confusion. What do you mean? I smiled, and it wasn't a nice smile. You wanted excitement, Serena. You wanted to feel alive again. Well, congratulations. Your new life starts now. You're going to help me rebuild what you tried to destroy. You're going to work for our marriage the way you should have been working all along. And if you ever lie to me again, if you ever even think about cheating on me again, I'll make what happened to Luke look like a love letter. She nodded slowly, understanding that her choices had led to this moment. The woman who'd thought she could play me for a fool was finally seeing who I really was. I'm sorry, Nick. I'm so sorry. Sorry doesn't fix anything, but work does. Commitment does. We'll see if you're capable of either. We drove home in separate cars, Serena following behind me like a lost puppy. The house looked different somehow, not like a prison anymore, but like something worth fighting for. Luke's Tesla was gone from Riverside Towers by morning. Word around town was that he'd left in the middle of the night, owing money to half the businesses in Millbrook. Elite Fitness closed permanently the following week. Serena quit her job at Innovate Tech and started working with me on construction projects, learning skills she'd never thought she'd need. It was hard work, dirty work, but it was honest work. And slowly, very slowly, she began to earn back a small measure of my respect. The divorce papers I'd prepared stayed in my desk drawer, a reminder of how close we'd come to losing everything. But I didn't file them. Instead, I decided to see if the woman I'd married was still buried somewhere under the selfish, entitled person she'd become. 6 months later, we were still married, still working together, still figuring out how to trust each other again. It wasn't the happy ending Serena had imagined with Luke, but it was real. And sometimes, real is enough.